Victorian councils launch legal action against Allan government's emergency services levy. Councils unite in historic challenge over state-imposed property tax. In an unprecedented legal maneuver, a coalition of Victorian councils has announced plans to take the Allan government to court over its proposed Emergency Services Property Levy (ESPL), arguing that the controversial tax threatens their financial autonomy and undermines local democracy. The move marks one of the most significant intergovernmental clashes in recent Victorian political history. Background. What is the Emergency Services Levy? The Emergency Services Property Levy, introduced as part of the Allan government's 2025-26 state budget, is intended to replace funding previously raised through insurance premiums. The government argues that the levy will provide a more stable, equitable, and broad-based funding mechanism for the state's fire and emergency services, including Fire Rescue Victoria, the Country Fire Authority (CFA), and Victoria State Emergency Service (VICSES). Under the new model, the state government will collect the ESPL through council rates. While local governments will not receive this money, they are expected to include it in the annual rate notices sent to property owners, effectively making councils the collection agents for a state tax. The state projects that the levy will generate more than $1.2 billion annually and argues that the funding is essential for bolstering Victoria's emergency response capabilities amid growing climate-related risks. Councils push back. At least 40 Victorian councils, both regional and metropolitan, have united in opposition, calling the ESPL an overreach and misuse of ratepayer systems. They argue that the levy not only burdens ratepayers already grappling with cost of living pressures but also sets a dangerous precedent by making councils responsible for state taxation without due compensation or consultation. Leading the charge is the Municipal Association of Victoria (MAV), which announced it would fund and coordinate a Supreme Court challenge against the Allan government. The legal case is expected to question the constitutionality of the state directing councils to collect a tax they neither control nor benefit from. Key concerns raised by councils. Loss of autonomy. Councils argue that being forced to act as agents of the state undermines their independence and ability to manage their own finances. Operational costs. While the state has promised some administrative funding, councils claim it is insufficient to cover the real costs of adapting systems, training staff, and handling inquiries and complaints related to the new levy. Ratepayer backlash. Many local leaders fear they will bear the brunt of ratepayer dissatisfaction, as most people will associate the new levy with council rates, despite its being a state tax. Legal and constitutional implications. Legal experts supporting the council suggest that the ESPL may violate provisions related to the separation of state and local government functions, particularly under the Victorian Constitution and Local Government Act. State government response. In response to the backlash, Premier Jacinta Allan defended the levy as a fair and necessary reform to secure funding for the state's emergency services. She noted that the previous model, which relied heavily on insurance premiums, was outdated and inequitable, often penalizing insured property owners while leaving uninsured properties outside the system. This is about ensuring every property owner contributes their fair share to keeping Victorians safe, Premier Allan said. We understand councils have concerns, but this reform is about saving lives and supporting communities during fires, floods, and other emergencies. The government has also emphasized that a similar model is already in use in New South Wales, where local councils collect a property-based emergency services levy on behalf of the state. Legal battle ahead. Legal teams representing the councils are expected to argue that the Victorian government cannot unilaterally mandate councils to collect state taxes, especially where this affects council operations and public perception. They will likely cite past legal precedents concerning the boundaries of state-local relations. We are not against funding emergency services, they're essential, said MAV President David Clark. But councils should not be used as tax collectors for the state, particularly when the system is rushed, confusing, and financially burdensome. The case is expected to be filed in the Victorian Supreme Court in early August 2025, with a request for an injunction to prevent implementation of the levy in its current form before the next rate cycle. Political reactions. The move has sparked intense political debate. The Victorian Greens and some crossbench MPs have sided with the councils, calling for a full parliamentary inquiry into the levy. Opposition leader John Pesutto has also seized on the controversy, labeling the levy a stealth tax, and accusing the Allan government of pushing costs onto councils to hide their own budget problems. This government is addicted to taxation by stealth. They've found a way to increase taxes while making councils take the blame, Pesutto told reporters at a press conference on Friday. Public sentiment. Initial reactions from the public have been mixed. While some support the idea of equitable emergency services funding, many are concerned about increased costs during an inflationary period. Ratepayers in areas already facing high council rates, such as inner Melbourne and affluent suburbs, have expressed anger at what they see as another unaffordable burden. Community forums and town hall meetings have been flooded with residents demanding clarity and questioning why the state did not explore more transparent or centralized collection methods. What's next? If the legal challenge succeeds, it could force the Allan government to rethink its approach to funding emergency services, potentially shifting the responsibility for levy collection back to a direct state-managed process. However, if the court rules in the state's favor, it could cement a new norm in intergovernmental finance, allowing state governments greater leverage over local councils. Either way, the legal standoff signals a turning point in Victorian governance, one that could reverberate nationally as other states consider similar models to fund increasingly expensive emergency service operations.